We're live from the Digital Media Zone. Joining me now on stage is Andlib Shah. She's the head of Techfugees, the US version. Techfugees is a global community response to the refugee crisis. There are a number of tech entrepreneurs and developers across the world that are creating and harnessing technology to address the refugee crisis, from everything from helping refugees in camps to helping them integrate into society. So, Andlib, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Melissa. So yeah, just a little bit about Techfugees. It was founded by Mike Butcher of TechCrunch in September 2015, and since then we've really just managed to grow a lot by word of mouth, and our goal is to galvanize the tech communities around the world, and me specifically just plugging into the technology community in Silicon Valley, in New York, Los Angeles, to have them get involved with nonprofits on the ground and agencies on the ground to find ways to work together. We want to bring the innovation and agility of the technology world to the expertise of agencies on the ground. And you know, Mr. Forrest Whitaker said a quote today that really stuck with me, which was, "Technology is the nervous system." And we really do believe that technology, you know, touches every sustainable development goal, and there's really a great opportunity, not just for the nonprofit world, but even for the for-profit world.
And what are some of the kinds of technology that have stood out to you that you've been seeing be created, whether that's apps or platforms, there's even some 3D printing going on in some refugee camps. I don't want to spoil it. Is there anything that has really stood out to you as innovation?
Definitely. You know, so one thing I want to mention is with the different solutions, they need to, you know, they run the gamut between very high-tech solutions like 3D printing, but we also need to keep in mind that there are nuances within every region where refugees are. For example, in Lebanon and Jordan, access to internet and data is very different from, you know, refugees in Greece and Turkey. And so some of the things that have stood out, you know, are simple. It could be a simple SMS solution that helps NGOs and refugees, helps NGOs coordinate resources. So if a refugee lands in Lesbos, they have a number that they're provided that they can text. You know, it's like a bot service where it replies with location to find resources. Or, you know, there's different apps that can help refugees learn the language of the host country that they end up in, so they can learn learn German before they actually head out to Germany. And then there's things like Share a Meal, where you can, you know, once you're in a host country, the locals can actually use the app to connect with the refugee, the migrant populations, to share a meal, and it's a great way to learn the language and the culture.
And for people who might not know, I mean, is it fair to say that really smartphones or even just 2G phones are really the lifeline of a lot of refugees that are living in camps?
Yes, definitely. You know, and not just smartphones, obviously, but just very simple 2G phones. The thing to keep in mind is at these camps, at these locations, access to data, 4G is very expensive. They have to buy data plans, and a lot of times these refugees are sharing one phone per family. But that being said, it is safe to assume that a lot of these you know, refugees will have access to at least a simple phone.
And Techfugees it really became viral pretty quickly after Mike Butcher launched it. I think everything he starts becomes big pretty quickly. That's what he told me.
It's like King Midas, right?
Yeah, I won't tell him that. Don't tell him I said that. But why is it important to establish a U.S. division of the movement?
There is a tremendous amount of firepower from the technology world in the United States, and so it's very crucial to get the communities involved. The one thing I told Mike was, you know, sitting in the UK, sitting in Europe, everyone's much closer to the crisis, and so in the U.S. we're so far removed from it, and we don't necessarily have access to the same information through our media, and so we, you know, the first step that I'd like to take in growing Techfugees in the U.S. is, you know, working on something I call the Empathy Project, which is really bringing, you know, educating the technology community on how they can get involved, because I feel like a lot of times, you know, they want to get involved, they just don't know how, or they're so far removed, they're not really connecting with the stories.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think there are the current biggest needs that the Techfugees community has? Because it's global, it's growing every day. There's a Techfugees launching in, I think, just launched in Istanbul. I think there's already one in Australia. They just keep kind of sprouting out because people are so inspired by this movement. But it is a nonprofit. You do need resources. What are those? What are the biggest ones that you need right now?
Well, outside of
Funding.
just funding, of course, the pains of a nonprofit, right? I think, you know, one of the things that we'd like to really see, the whole point of Techfugees is to, to provide and track real impact on the ground. Because if we're not making a real difference in the lives of these refugees very quickly, then what's the point of us existing? We don't want to be, you know, charlatans waving a white flag. And so one thing we need to do right away is there are so many, you know, hackathons. We have 18 chapters. We have a tremendous amount of hackathons that have taken place. And what we'd like to do now is from, you know, we've had the ideation piece. We've gone through some of the creation piece. Now, what we'd like to do is take the very cool technologies, very cool ideas that teams have come up with, and then find the agencies on the ground, you know, not just the big organizations like UNHCR or UNICEF or UNDP, but actually find the smaller organizations that we can take these ideas and deploy them, test them, and then create a feedback loop to then iterate on those ideas.
Yes, fantastic. It sounds like a plan. Well, I think you're well on your way. The movement is growing every hour, according to my Facebook feed. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Melissa.